In the middle of our neighborhood-wide garage sale, under a fluttering canopy that smelled like plastic tarps and lemonade, I stood up, took the mic out of Paige Salazar's French manicured hand, and said 3 words. "Read the clause." People turned. I watched the colour drain from a man in a linen shirt as a deputy unfolded a crisp court order. He had a paper cup of iced coffee, and that look men get when they think a woman their mother's age is about to overplay her hand. Bless his heart. The speakers popped. A late June wind rattled price tags, and I nodded at the deputy. It was time. Before I rewind this whole mess, do me a favour. Tap subscribe and drop a comment with your city or town. I love seeing where folks are watching from. It helps more mums like me be heard. Anyway, let me take you back to how we got here, because there's a little green string, a letter with a coffee ring, and a promise I made that'll matter more than you think. 11 months earlier, I was up in my attic, cussing at dust motes like they'd done me personal harm. I'm 68, a retired public school art teacher with a stubborn back and a soft spot for anything with age. I go by Ellie to everyone except the bank, which insists on Eleanor Hartley. The bank also insists on fees for breathing, but that's another story. I live in Willow Bend, New York, in a small cape with a steep staircase and a yard I can mow on my good knee days. Sycamore Ridge is the kind of place where the mailman knows you, the HOA knows you too well, and everyone's got opinions about porch paint. It's very American in that way. All about freedom until your azaleas lean an inch past the sidewalk. My husband, Frank, died 9 years ago in that quiet way. Fall asleep on the couch with the game on. Never wake up. We were together 41 years. He ran a frame shop on Mill Road back when people still took paintings to be reframed instead of buying something off the rack online. He had the hands of a saint and the patience of one of those monks who draw with sand and smile when a draft ruins it. Frank taught me to look at edges. He used to say, "The frame tells you what the painting wants to be." It sounded like nonsense until it didn't. Since he died, our son, Adam, 34 and charming when he's not anxious enough to chew a straw into confetti, has drifted closer and farther like the tide. He means well. He always means well. The attic was kind of our marriage in boxes. Frank's tools, a box of third-grade art projects, a stack of canvases from when I thought I might be taken seriously. There was also a bundle wrapped in brown paper and tied with green string, Frank's habit when something mattered. The string was his signal, not for the rummage bin. On the paper, in his slanted block letters, he'd written, "Dutch boy." We called it that, jokingly, because the face was young and the palette was dark, and, this is what artists do, we name things until we feel less terrified of them. The truth is, I never really looked. We used the bundle as a shelf for all the other boxes. Life becomes a series of little altars to the things you'll get to later, and later is a tricky liar. What I didn't know then was that a hungry man named Victor had already noticed me on the block. He'd circled Sycamore Ridge the previous fall like a hawk, watched from his car as older folks hauled out memories. He paid cash and called it kindness. Remember that name, and remember the green string. I was kneeling when my phone buzzed. "Hey, Mom," Adam said. He has my father's voice, cheerful, like he's choosing to be. "Can you do me a tiny favor? Kelsey's dad can get us a great rate if we refinance, but the appraiser's coming in 2 weeks, and the house needs to look, you know, habitable? Like I haven't lived here for 37 years? I wiped my forehead with the tail of my t-shirt. "Adam, if this is about those magazines by the chair, it's about everything. Kelsey's organizing a neighborhood sale next weekend. Her parents do this every year. People love it. Dad would have liked it." He took a breath. We can get you some extra cash, and it'll be nice to clear out, right? I sat back on my heels. I could hear Kelsey laughing in the background, that high, tinkling laugh like an ice scoop in a glass, and Kelsey's father's voice, smooth as a closing argument. Douglas Whitmore specializes in two things: real estate and acting like your best friend while he picks your pocket. He wears twin sets and loafers even when he's home. He's the kind of man who calls you kiddo when you're pushing 70 and still makes you feel 5. I don't need money, I said. It wasn't entirely true. Property taxes have a way of multiplying when you're not looking, and the supermarket receipt had started to scold me. But pride is a funny animal. Come on, Mum. It's just stuff. Not everything is just stuff. Okay. We'll mark the sentimental things not for sale. Kelsey's great with labels. This is going to be fun. You'll see. I closed my eyes. All right, I said, because sometimes you say yes to the boy he used to be, not the man he's practicing. But the green tags stay. Anything with green string is off limits. Period. Got it, he said, and it sounded like he meant it. We spent the week staging my memories like inventory. Kelsey, pretty as a jewelry ad, big eyes, clever mouth, arrived with a bag of neon stickers and a clipboard. She slipped her arm through mine like we were girlfriends in a movie and whispered, "We are going to make this house sing." "We're not auditioning," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "We're living." She looked around. "So many treasures," she said. That was her word for junk. She said it like she was tasting marmalade. "This old mirror? So charming. The painting of the barn? Rustic. The ceramic rooster? We can do 10 on that." "5?" I said. She laughed. "You're feisty. I love it." Douglas arrived an hour later in a golf shirt that probably had an opinion. He set up folding tables like he was on a mission from God and the bank. "We're going to clear this out, Ellie," he said, clapping his hands. "Clarity is kindness." "To whom?" I asked. "To everyone," he said, and smiled. We had a little dance, the kind you do around power. I hate that I felt old in my own kitchen. Douglas suggested we box up the heavy things from the attic. I told him I'd take care of the attic. He put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed it just a notch too tight, like he was reminding me the bone is still there. "Let the kids help, kiddo," he said. "We don't want you falling through the ceiling." What I didn't say was that I had fallen through plenty of ceilings and learned how to crawl out. What I didn't know was that the door to the attic lock, which Frank replaced himself, had a hairline crack that would turn into a valley with a hard twist. Remember this. Locks are only as strong as the respect people have for them. The first uneasy sign came Wednesday. I was making coffee at 6 a.m., the kind of morning when the air feels newly washed, when I heard footsteps above me. I froze. "Adam?" I called up the stairs. "Yeah," he called back, cheerful. "Just getting a head start." I said I'd take care of the attic. "We're just moving boxes down. It's fine." There was a scrape, the sound of cardboard rubbing cardboard, and then a noise like a deer spotting headlights. Whoa, this thing must weigh a ton. I went up, too fast. My knee complained, and my heart pounded the old way. Adam, tall and messy, stood where the slope crest met the flat. The brown paper bundle was in his hands, the green string rubbing his forearm. Kelsey, in pale pink shorts, stood back like a tourist at a crime scene. Douglas had his arms crossed. "What did I say about green string?" I asked. The words came out thinner than I meant. Adam shifted. I know. But this is a good example of, why we need to go through things. It's a painting, Mum. Nobody's seen it in years. If you don't even look at it, it's not for sale. I said. Douglas picked at the tape like he owned the air. What is it anyway? A copy, I said. We used to call it Dutch Boy. Cute. Kelsey smiled. Can I peek? My chest was tight. I took the bundle and put it back, tucked in the corner where the roof dipped low. It can be a lot of things, I said. And today, it's not your business. I touched the green string. This is me telling you no. Respect that. Adam rolled his eyes, and it killed me a little. We're trying to help. I'm trying to be heard. That's the thing about being older. People mistake your pace for confusion when you're just choosing your words. We moved on, or pretended to. The week chewed by. I priced 100 knickknacks. Kelsey curated displays. Douglas set up a square reader and a cash box, and kept suggesting we drag more to the curb. Thursday night, Kelsey's friends came to practice making tasting boards for the sale. They laughed loud. They laughed at me once, thinking I was in the other room. She's sweet, one of them said. Like a pioneer doll. I hope Adam can get her into something smaller. I went to bed with teeth clenched. At the HOA meeting, Paige paraded me for points. Now, Ellie's a great example of community spirit, she said into the mic, her pearl earrings bobbing. She's Marie Kondoing like crazy. She got rid of that funny gnome by her azaleas, didn't you, Ellie? It wasn't bothering anyone, I said softly. Some of us consider lawn ornamentation a slippery slope, she said, bright as a lemon. A few people laughed. I felt the sting, the small sting that means you've been chosen as an acceptable target. It's never about the gnome. It's about the hierarchy being confirmed in public. After the meeting, Paige cornered me by the folding tables. By the way, she said, dropping her voice, we're doing the garage sale map again, and we're putting you between the Whitmores and the Goldens. Good foot traffic. Lots of buyer eyes. Is that what we call neighbours now? I asked. Buyer eyes? She smiled. It's a fundraiser for the playground. More sales, more mulch. I went home tired. I went to the attic. I touched the bundle. Not you, I said. Not now. I made a promise, remember? Let me tell you about that promise. It was 1981. The Hartley frame shop smelled like wood shavings and coffee. A man named Hendrik de Wit, older, Dutch, with a coat that looked like it had been mended by 10 different women, came in carrying a wrapped canvas. He spoke the way people do when time has done a number on their voice. It needs a frame for a home, he said. Frank took it, unwrapped it, and the look on his face changed in slow motion. He didn't say Rembrandt. He never would have. But later, after the man left with a new frame on something else entirely, a seascape, forgettable, Frank told me, if this was something, it would be something. We both laughed. The man never came back for the Dutch boy. He left a note 6 months later, thin paper in spidery handwriting. Keep this safe for me. If I don't return, let it be a thank you. Thank you for what? He never said. Remember the thank you. Remember how silence can be a kind of signature. We tried once to have it looked at, in '83, by a professor up at Hudson University. He studied it with the patience of geologists. It's an old copy, he said, but the underpainting is interesting. He scribbled a letter, the kind of letter academics like to write. Big adjectives, small conclusions. I'd hold on to it, he added, peering at Frank over his glasses. At the very least, it's a lovely piece of history. We held on. Life happened. We put it in brown paper because the corner of the frame was splintery and snagged sweaters. We tied it with green string because Frank always did that for things that could too easily wander. We kept it like a secret. We weren't sure we wanted to know. Saturday of the sale dawned hot and friendly. The kind of day when you can hear sprinklers and small quarrels, and everyone walks around with coffee cups like props. The neighborhood smelled like cinnamon crumb cake and bargain plastic. We put out card tables. Adam stuck signs taped to sticks. Kelsey wore a sun hat you could land a helicopter on. Douglas set up the square device and asked me for my bank routing number loud enough for the sparrows to learn it. I taped green "not for sale" tags on a small set of drawers, a crate of records, a quilt that still smelled like my grandmother's house. "You sure you don't want me to move some more stuff down?" Adam asked, eyeing the attic stairs. "I'm sure." He lifted his hands like a TV magician. "I will leave the sacred attic to its ghosts." At 9, the pickers descended. They come like birds at a feeder. Quick, bright-eyed, all elbows. They smell like coffee and opportunity. A woman in a crocheted vest asked me about the rooster. 5, I said. She counted with 3. 4, I said. She smiled when I didn't blink. I was having a good time, if I'm honest. Money isn't the point of a garage sale so much as the relief of letting something go to a place you don't have to see anymore. At 10, I went inside to refill lemonade. 3 minutes, tops. When I came back, Adam was hunched over the cash box like he was hiding something. He always hunches when he's nervous. He's my boy. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said too fast. "What?" He held up 5 $100 bills. "Hey, win-win. I got rid of that big old painting. The brown paper thing. Sold it to that nice guy with the UVA hat." My brain misfired. "What did you do?" "Mom, it's fine. You weren't even looking at it. It had dust on it older than me." He gestured with the money like the smell of it was proof. $500 for a piece of junk? That's a steal. For us. Kelsey tucked hair behind her ear. "He was a sweetheart," she said. "Said he was a teacher. He's going to hang it in his office. Trust me, it's better than the attic." The world went quiet. Hot. The sound in my ears like when the circus used to set up down by the river and you could hear the generator. "What did I say about green string?" I whispered. "It's just string, Mom." Adam bit his lip. "People are here. Can we not do this now?" "Who?" I said. "Who took it?" Kelsey shrugged. "Tall guy, straw hat, linen shirt, nice shoes." She smiled like being tall with nice shoes was a character reference. "He paid cash, didn't haggle." "Did he give a name?" "Victor," Adam said reluctantly. "He wrote it on the sign-in sheet we've got for the raffle. He was really nice." I turned to the table where Kelsey had set up a clipboard with "Enter to win, free plant" in bubbly letters. There was a list of scrawled names and emails. And there it was. Victor Lang. VictorALangFineFinds.com. Phone number with a 917 area code. He'd been honest in a way that sank like a rock in my gut. I knew the type. Always a variation of Lang, Sloan, Cole, Hunt. Predators come with names that sound like expensive soap. "I told you," I said, but my voice cracked. "Adam, I told you." He shook his head. "You hold on to everything like it's going to leave you. Stuff is not love." "Then why are you begging me to sell it to pay for yours?" It came out with teeth. It wasn't fair. It was true. Neighbors were starting to look. Kelsey's mouth tightened. "Maybe this can wait," she said, in that voice people use when they're asking you to perform dignity. I walked back into the house. The kitchen was exactly the same as when I walked out. Bowl, lemons, the smell of sugar. The world was different. I went to the attic. I stared at the space where the brown paper bundle had leaned for years, like a skinny friend in a group photo. The indentation on the floorboards was the outline of a life. I touched the dust with the tip of one finger. Then I sat down on the top step and cried in that embarrassing, gasping way you can only do when you know there's not a soul who can show up and fix it. And then I stopped. I didn't have the luxury of being delicate. Not anymore. Not after green string and $500 and nice shoes. I made calls. First to my neighbour, Nancy, who worked 30 years as a clerk at the county courthouse and knows how to move paper through a building like wind through leaves. "Slow down," she said. "Breathe. You've got the raffle sheet? Good. You've got your green string rule documented? We'll make it real enough." "It's a sale," I said stupidly. "Adam sold it. How do I—" "Tell me about the painting." I did. Some of it. Not enough. "You said there was a thank you note," she said sharply. "Where is it?" "In a box with old letters and warranties." "Find it. I'm coming over." While I waited, I called Alma. She used to downtown law so hard she got sick of the smell of shoe polish. She retired to Willowbend and grows tomatoes the size of babies' heads. Alma is Frank's old friend from nights when the union was still a thing. She helped us set up the Hartley Family Living Trust in 1984 when we were too broke to know better. "It keeps things clean," she'd said back then. "You want to be clean, Ellie. Messy wills make messy people, and messy people show up when there's money." That trust saved me after Frank died. This is an important thing to know about trusts. They can be the difference between, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do," and service of a court order with the authority to make a man stop moving. Alma answered on the third ring. "Ellie?" she said, and I felt steady already. "Alma," I said, "I think I just lost something I couldn't afford to lose." By early afternoon, my kitchen table looked like a detective show. Nancy was there with her notebook. Alma had her bad reading glasses on and a pen that clicked when she was thinking. Adam did not come in. Kelsey did not come in. I made a list of everything Frank ever put in that attic and the good things we kept, and the promise from Mr. DeWitt, and the 1983 letter from the professor up at Hudson University. "We need the paper," Alma said. "All of it." I found the note with the coffee ring. It was smaller than I remembered. The edges were soft. "Keep this safe for me. If I don't return, let it be a thank you." Signed H. DeWitt with a looping D and a straight little fence of an H. "Thank you," Nancy said. "Interesting word. Does it transfer title? Maybe. Maybe not. Did you look for him?" We had, back when people looked for each other by asking around. Frank tried a number in a ledger. It didn't work. Life went on. We filed the mystery in the category labelled Someday. Consider this my first regret. Someday's interest rate could break a back. But consider this my first piece of luck. Alma had, in fact, put almost everything of ours with a whiff of maybe into the trust. Schedule B, personal property, art and objet d'art, things Frank acquired in the shop, or otherwise. The phrase otherwise is dirty-mouthed and useful. "Does Adam have authority to sell trust property?" Alma asked me. "No," I said. "Only you. You're the trustee." "Bingo," she said. "He sold something he didn't own, which means the buyer does not have title. Unless you entrusted it to a merchant who deals in goods of that sort, which you did not. The Sun is not a merchant, even with a square device and a clipboard." She clicked the pen. "We need to get in front of a judge." "On a Saturday?" Nancy grinned. "Yes," she said, like a cat deciding to pounce. They wrote a petition for a temporary restraining order like we were in a movie. They printed it on my cranky old HP that jams if you look at it wrong. Nancy knew which clerk was covering emergency motions and texted her, which is the kind of cynical good that keeps towns from falling into holes. Alma called a process server named Roy, who's been sober for 9 years and owns 2 good suits. He'd serve the Pope if you paid him in advance. Everything moved. I found the professor's letter to add some spice. X-radiography reveals an underpainting with energy not typical of a mere copy. He'd written energy like it was alive. He'd underlined X-radiography 3 times. He'd attached a terrible Polaroid where the monogram looked like RHL in a tiny, proud hand. I'd never noticed the tiny white ripple under the glaze before. It looked like a thought. We called the Hudson University Art History Department. The old professor was long gone. A young one named Dr. Sander called back anyway. He had that voice, excited, careful. "If what you describe is accurate," he said, "you might have something from Rembrandt's circle. The workshop produced enormous quantities. There are diagnostic procedures we can do beyond X-ray, IR reflectography, paint cross-section, dendrochronology on the panel if there is one." "It's canvas," I said. "I think." "Well," he said, unfazed. "Then we'd look at the thread count with a stereo microscope, ground layers, varnish. At the very least, I'd like to see it." He paused. "Look, do you want me to loop in the art crime team? If this is something, and someone's already trying to walk away with it." "How do you know someone is walking away with it?" I asked. "Because that's always the next line in the story you're telling me." We sent him the note, a photo of Frank with the bundle, God bless 1994 and our habit of photographing everything on Christmas, and a copy of the trust schedule. He didn't promise anything. He said he'd call a colleague. He said, "Good luck," like how a lifeguard says, "Hold on." At 5:30, the court granted the temporary restraining order, 15 pages of words that meant, "This thing is not to move." And this man named Victor with the nice shoes is to present himself and his conscience in court Monday at 9 a.m. The order was a piece of paper with a heartbeat. Roy rolled up, grinning, his tie crooked. "Where do you want him served?" he asked. I thought about the email on the sign-up sheet. I thought about the 917 number. I thought about the fact that someone who bought a wrapped canvas for $500 from a woman's son in a driveway was not going to show up voluntarily to a courtroom with fluorescent lighting. "He'll be back tomorrow," I said. "These guys can't resist the second day of a sale. He probably left a trail down to his car, and we can make sure he comes back." "What do you mean?" Alma asked, narrowing one eye. "I'll bait him," I said. It came out flat as a nail. That night, I posted more old paintings, frames, odds and ends, Sunday only, under a throwaway Craigslist account. I asked Paige to add additional items from the Hartley house to the HOA email, which she did with too many exclamation points. Kelsey rolled her eyes at me from the living room like I was being childish. "Really?" she said. "We have to make this a thing?" "It is a thing," I said. "You just can't let things go. It's like your hobby." She sniffed. This is why Adam gets so stressed. I was tired of being the villain in his stories. "Kelsey," I said, looking her in the face, "do you know what the green string means?" She blinked. "That it's old." "It means someone I loved trusted me with something, and I took that seriously. And now you're going to blow up our weekend because you think you've been wronged." "Yes," I said softly. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." Adam didn't speak to me that night. The house felt thick. I slept the way women do when trouble is a house guest. If I closed my eyes too long, I'd wake to a smaller world. At dawn, I heard sprinkle heads clicking in little circles. I boiled eggs and put them in a bowl, like that could anchor the morning. At 8, Paige was already at the park with a portable PA and a table for the donation to the playground bucket. Neighbours filed in with folding chairs like we were about to watch a parade. Roy stood behind a pile of board games, pretending to browse. Alma sat with a crossword and a lemon water like a woman on vacation. Nancy did laps with a camera that looked like an old Fuji, but was just her phone in a case. And me? I paced, and I tried to look like a woman who might put out 2 more oil paintings any minute if a nice man asked. At 9:05, he returned. Victor Lang is the kind of man men trust. Tall, easy shoulders, linen that looked more expensive the less it tried. He wore a straw hat that belonged on a rooftop bar. He smiled with all his teeth. It was a good smile. Complicated. He had a woman with him this time, younger, a cool navy dress and sandals that whispered. She stayed a half step behind. I watched him scan the tables like I was made of glass, and he was searching for something inside me. "Morning," he said, and I remembered then how predators use the most innocent words like a test. "Any more of those old pictures?" He tilted his head toward my house like he wanted to see what my kitchen smelled like. "I'm Victor. We met yesterday." I looked at him like we hadn't. "I do have 2 more," I said, and I felt Alma's eyes on my back, like a hand. "But before anything else, I need you to do something for me." He smiled, amused. "Sure." "Read the clause," I said, and nodded at Paige. The effect was immediate and delicious. "You know how a room goes quiet when the lights flicker?" That. Paige's eyes went wide. She handed me the mic because people who love control also love not being blamed. "Folks," I said, and the mic squealed a little, and I didn't flinch. "I've got a small legal housekeeping item. Shouldn't take but a minute." Roy stepped forward, face neutral, suit too, warm. He held up the court order. "Mr. Victor Lang?" he asked politely. Victor laughed. "Wow, that's a first. You're serving documents at a garage sale?" "Mr. Lang," Roy said, sticking with the script. "By order of the Dutchess County Supreme Court, you are hereby served with a temporary restraining order commanding you to preserve and produce for the court any and all rights of possession, title, or claim in a certain painting purchased by you at a garage sale on the premises of 34 Sycamore Lane on Saturday, June." "Oh, come on," Victor said. But something in his jaw tightened. It's always the jaw with these guys. It's where they keep the truth. The deputy, Officer Mitchell, steady and kind, and someone who wore his uniform like it was borrowed from a better man, stood next to Roy. He wasn't there to arrest anybody. He was there to make the air behave. He took the order, glanced at it, looked at Victor, looked at me. "What's going on here?" he asked calmly. I took the mic back. "It's simple," I said. "My son sold a painting he did not own. It wasn't his to sell. He didn't have the authority. The painting belongs to a trust, and the trust's trustee did not authorize the transfer. We have records. We have a note from the man who left it with us decades ago. We have a letter from a university indicating this may be of significant historical interest. And we have Mr. Lang, who, if the court will allow, will not be leaving the county with our property." "I'm a teacher," Victor said into the wind, a little too loudly. "I buy old prints. This is ridiculous." He smiled at the crowd like they were his friends, like they'd all gone to camp together. "Play the video," Alma said softly from her folding chair. My heart thumped. Nancy held up her phone, tapped a screen, and she'd already patched it into the PA with a cable. Bless that woman and her grandchildren for teaching her how. The audio came through like a ghost. The neighbour across the street has a door camera pointed, unfortunately for trespassers, directly at my driveway. It had caught a clear slice of Saturday morning. The recording rose and fell with sparrows. You could hear Victor's voice distinctly as he bantered. It's amazing how the truth sounds different when it's about to cost someone something. That's a nice old canvas, his voice said. Shame it's damaged like that. It wasn't. The frame was. He was lowering the price while pretending not to. I don't know anything about it, Adam said on the tape, his voice small. My heart twisted. It's just been up there forever. Probably a print, Victor's voice said. He chuckled. Tell you what, I'll take a chance on it. Help you clear space. My wife hates clutter. You'll be a hero. In the recording, you can hear Kelsey laugh and call me old in a polite way. The camera caught the exchange of 5 bills. It caught Victor's hand on the tape, tugging, like he was helpfully checking where to grip. It caught his parting line. You never know, he said. Sometimes junk has a story. He smiled at his own joke and walked away like his feet barely touched ground. Now, maybe that didn't sound like a confession to you, but in a driveway, from a buyer who deals in art, in the presence of trust property identified with a green string that had been pointed out 2 hours earlier in front of witnesses, it sounded exactly like what it was. A man trying to see how far past the line he could step without getting wet. You recorded me? Victor asked, all injured innocence. But the hat brim made him look like a cartoon. The camera recorded my driveway, I said. The 21st century is full of eyes, Victor. Mr. Lang, Roy said, pivoting. You are under order to preserve the painting. You'll accompany the deputy to your vehicle to confirm it is not present, and will refrain from removing any goods from the premises or the county until the hearing. My car's clean, he said. I took it to a friend's. Oh, perfect, Alma murmured. Even better. Also, I said, because if you're going to do this, you may as well do it right. Someone else wants to say hello. 2 men and a woman moved through the crowd with the sort of purposeful quiet that gives church deacons and federal agents the same kind of gravity. They weren't wearing jackets in the heat. They weren't flashing badges like TV clowns. But when they showed their credentials to Officer Mitchell, he stood a little straighter, and even Paige closed her mouth. Mrs. Hartley, the taller man said, low. I'm Agent Carter with the Bureau. This is Agent Morales. We received a call from Hudson University, as well as a notice from a European database about a painting that might match a description in an old registry. My God, Paige breathed, because she loves nothing more than a story that gives her permission to care. Is this about Nazis? She whispered the last word, like she was afraid it might hear her. Ma'am, Agent Morales said politely, we're not using words like that in public. Yet. My legs felt like hollow wood. I gripped the edge of the table. What registry? I asked, my voice steady because my mother taught me how to shake without showing it. Agent Carter looked at Victor, then at me. We'll talk Monday. For now, we'd like Mr. Lang to accompany us downtown and tell us the location of the work so it can be secured. It all happened in 5 minutes. Victor's smile disappeared. The woman in navy, his assistant, partner, melted backward into the crowd. Roy took a small step to his left. So did the deputy. There's nothing so powerful as 3 people who understand exactly where to stand. Victor made a mistake. He laughed. It was a short, mean sound. This is absurd, he said. It's a garage sale. It's a crime scene if you've moved stolen property, Agent Morales said. Stolen? Kelsey gasped, dragging the syllables like they'd caught on something. Alma put her hand on my arm. I could feel her heartbeat through skin and years of tomato growing. Breathe, she said, almost into my skin. Those words don't mean what they think they mean yet. Let them mean what we need them to later. If you were there, you'll remember the way wind moves the shade on a day like that, the way it dapples faces. You'll remember the clink of a jar on Paige's donation table. You'll remember how silent a line of box store folding chairs can be when a whole neighborhood is sitting on them refusing to admit their hearts are pounding. And you'll remember this, my son's face. Adam had slipped in behind the crowd. He always did that, arrived in doorways. He looked grey. He looked like he wanted to dissolve. Our eyes met. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." It landed like a stone, and then it cracked, and something bright came out. I couldn't get to him. Not yet. There's a rhythm to justice that doesn't allow for hugging in Act 1. Victor went with the agents. He didn't have a choice. The deputy walked next to him like an older brother, half a step behind a wild one. The crowd breathed again. Someone rustled a bag of chips. Paige turned the PA down, low. "Well, that was exciting," she said into the air, because Paige can smell a headline. I gave the mic back, like it was just the end of announcements at a bake sale. "Enjoy the sunshine," I said, and my voice did not break. "And if you came for the free plant, see me at the table." The second half of the weekend tasted metallic. People bought a few things out of sheer discomfort. My neighbour Lila handed me a 10 for a cracked teapot and squeezed my hand until my bones lined up. "You're something else," she whispered. The rumours spun like toys in the hands of bored children. "It's a fake," someone said. "It's in the paper already," someone else swore. It wasn't. Not yet. By 4, the tables were empty enough to knock down. Adam approached like a dog expecting to be hit. I hate that image. It's still the truest one. "Mum," he said. His voice was raw. I didn't know." "You didn't want to," I said. Then I made my voice lower, because he does better with lower. "Adam, when I tie green string on something, it's not because I'm bored and I like crafts. It's because I made a promise to protect it. Not from thieves. From our worst selves. From the part of us that gets tired of being the memory keeper and wants to trade a story for $500 and a cleaner attic." I freaked out, he said. About the appraiser and the refinance and Kelsey's dad and... "I know," I said, and I did. I knew the air he breathes because I breathed. It too. Bill due dates like beads on a string, being told something about yourself by people who benefit if you believe it. "We'll talk after Monday." "Is it really—" he started, then stopped. "Mum, you think it's—" He made a little circle with his hand, like he could draw a word in the air. "I think what I think doesn't matter," I said. "I think we're going to find out what the world thinks. And whatever happens, we still have to live here. So we will." He cried. I didn't. There are times when you let your sun be water and you be rock. It's not forever. It's just now. Monday was the worst kind of theatre. Fluorescent lights, low ceilings, and the stale smell of paper. The courtroom was full. People who have nothing to do with you will make your business their morning if there's even a hint of spectacle. Paige was there in a jacket like a news anchor. Kelsey sat primly, her knees together like prayer. Alma sat with one leg thrown over the other like she owned the carpet. Nancy took notes she'd later put in a shoebox labelled "Ellie Wins," because Nancy believes words have weight and you can store them for winter. Victor arrived with a lawyer who looked like he'd been rolled in money and confidence. The assistant in Navy didn't come. I wondered if she would show up again, and if she'd ever stop wearing the same kind of sandals. Agent Carter and Agent Morales sat near the back, so the room wouldn't panic. Dr. Sander came in with a long tube and a laptop and hair that did not know where to land. He looked both terrified and joyous, which is how I think art people look when something they only believed in inside their heads introduces itself in person. The judge, a woman named Hannah Reeves, with spectacles that made her look perpetually unimpressed, called us to order. Alma stood, smooth as butter. "Your Honour," she began, "this is a simple matter complicated by history." Victor's lawyer leapt at complicated like it was a rope. "My client purchased a piece of personal property at a public retail sale. The seller took cash, issued a written receipt, and gave no notice of adverse claim. Any prior interest is extinguished." "No, it is not," Alma said, smiling without warmth. "Title does not transfer from a thief nor from a non-owner, unless the goods are entrusted to a merchant who deals in goods of that kind under UCC 2403. A garage sale does not a merchant make. The property in question was held by a trust and had explicit markings identifying it as not subject to sale. The buyer is, in fact, a merchant, which is deliciously ironic." "Allegedly," he said. "Fine," she said. "Allegedly. We also have evidence that Mr. Lang misrepresented the nature of the painting to induce a sale. He called it a print." "I said probably," Victor snapped. "You said probably like a man says probably when he wants to pick your pocket and make you apologize for the lint." The judge hid a smile in her coffee. "I'm more interested in the trust." Alma handed over the thick paper like someone delivering a weapon with the safety on. "Schedule B. Trustee signature required for transfer. No such signature exists. In fact, the trust instrument specifically prohibits beneficiaries from disposing of items enumerated in Schedule B without trustee consent. The phrase is void ab initio, which is Latin for no, sir." Victor's lawyer sputtered. He looked at his client, who suddenly seemed smaller in his linen. "And Mr. Lang?" Judge Reeves asked, turning her head like someone listening to a violin. "Where is the work?" Victor smiled without his teeth this time. "At a secure location, as is proper with any old picture someone suddenly decides is valuable." Agent Morales stood abruptly. "Your Honour, if I may?" She approached, handed up a sealed envelope, and the room's atoms changed. Even people who pretend to hate the federal government get quiet around envelopes with certain stamps. Judge Reeves opened it, pulled out a single sheet, read, then looked up. "Well," she said, "that's interesting. Mr. Lang, it seems my colleagues in federal service have taken an interest in your secure location." She removed her glasses and gave him the look every teacher saves for the kid who's too smart for his own good. "You will produce the work to the care of the FBI art crime team by close of business today. You will not attempt to sell, assign, encumber, or further hide it. And you will not leave this jurisdiction without permission. Ms. Reyes, the trust is enjoined from transferring the work until we resolve the question of superior title. Court is adjourned for today." "What question?" I asked Alma, too loudly, and she patted my arm like you'd pat a horse's neck before a jump. Dr. Sander approached. He smelled faintly like coffee and chalkboard chalk. "Mrs. Hartley," he said softly, eyes bright. "We did the preliminary work we could do. The underdrawing. I've never seen anything like it except in Amsterdam. It's in the wrist. There are line breaks in the initial stages that have—" He stopped himself, looked at me like a person, not a paper. "It's good," he said simply. "It's possibly very good." "And the question?" I asked. I could hear Paige texting with her eyes. She was making a sentence that would get shared later. "Local teacher almost had a Rembrandt." "There's an old record," Agent Carter said, stepping closer. "From a registry of works displaced in the 1940s. There was a portrait. It was listed as young scholar, unknown hand, attributed to Rembrandt's circle, that disappeared from a collection in Amsterdam in 1944. It was last noted with a dealer who fled east and then west when things collapsed. The dealer's name was De Witt. My heart did a thing I don't have language for. "Hendrik," I whispered. The room tilted. I sat. It turns out, and I'm condensing a lot here because the weeks that followed were a casserole of paperwork and strangers, that our Mr. H. De Witt had come to the States in the late 40s with a list of small names and one large guilt. He drifted between New York and Michigan and finally to our town, of all places, because the river reminded him of something else. He framed lithographs for a few years, using tools a friend let him borrow. He was lonely. He was kind. He died in 1986 in a rented room with no forwarding address. The painting? If it was the same painting, it had sat wrapped in paper in our attic while the world turned. It was a miracle of forgetfulness or a condemnation of it. Depends on who was telling the story. The Bureau did their thing. They took custody in a way that felt like someone taking your child to a better school you can't afford. They invited Dr. Sander to bring in his tools. They invited a Dutch lab to view samples. We signed documents. We were polite to men with expensive suits and women with clipped haircuts who all said ma'am in different ways. I did not sleep much. Adam started to show up to mow the lawn unasked. He brought me a sandwich and left it on the counter like a peace offering to a bear. I ate it. That's what forgiveness tastes like sometimes. The day they told us, it was raining in sheets. Agent Carter came to the house with Alma. Dr. Sander was there too, blinking rain off his eyelashes. Carter held his hat. "Mrs. Hartley," he said. "It's real. It's..." Our colleagues are comfortable calling it a rediscovered work by Rembrandt van Rijn. Early portrait. They're calling it Portrait of a Young Reader. The media will call it other things. Don't read the comments. I sat down like my knees had been waiting. I laughed. Because what else do you do when the world you know opens a trap door under you? I cried, because the thing I had in my attic while I worried about the price of apples was something people would cross oceans for. I felt guilty, because Hendrik de Witt's ghost sat on my back step. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Alma said. "We do the real work." The real work looked like a long rectangle of table and too many cups of coffee. We had to untangle title. We had to decide if Frank's thank you and the trust's custody outranked claims from de Witt's heirs, if any existed. There were no direct descendants. There were cousins, though, in the Netherlands. There were also institutional claims. A museum in Amsterdam put in a politely ferocious letter. A foundation in Boston wrote with a tone that suggested they were doing me a favor by suggesting I permanently loan it to them. Everyone knows better when there's treasure on the floor. I found myself on a video call with people with accents like clean water. An older woman named Anneliese introduced herself as D. Witt's niece's daughter. "My father remembered being told of a lost picture," she said, hands folded. "Hendrik was a complicated man. He did things in the war. We don't know." Her eyes met mine. "I don't want to take from you. I don't want to erase what your life has been. I don't want to erase yours either," I said. We were two women practicing not to be cruel while men shuffled papers somewhere off camera. We hammered out an agreement. It was not magic. It was human. The trust would retain ownership, but would split proceeds with the de Witt heirs if the work were sold. If it were placed on long-term loan to a public institution, there'd be an annual sum for the heirs. The rest would stay in the trust for the education and support of Hartley family members and causes consistent with the trust meaning. The phrase was Alma's. It meant, If I wanted to build an art centre in Willowbend instead of buying a Bentley, I could. And I did. We went to auction because the Americans and the Dutch and everyone in between agreed that an open marketplace would shut a lot of people up. The number still doesn't feel real when I say it. 47 million. $47 million at a modern auction where rich men wear sneakers and clap like golf. They clapped for our attic. They clapped for my husband's hands. They clapped for Hendrik's ghost. I cried in a bathroom where the hand dryer tried to dry my heart. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, you were right about the frame. It wanted the world around it to be big. Victor. He tried 100 maneuvers all the same. He tried to claim finder's fee. He tried to claim unjust enrichment. He tried to sell other things he'd acquired from other women's driveways with the same voice. The feds were patient. The state attorney general was not. He was charged with attempted fraud, misleading statements in the course of commerce, and a complex thing about interstate transport of cultural property that made his lawyer make a face like sour milk. He took a plea when someone brought up 3 other names, 3 other driveways, 3 other bundles. He gave back a small fortune in stolen or misrepresented goods. He apologized in court without saying sorry. He wears state-issued linens now certain nights and thinks about the difference between probably a print and underpainting in a wrist. He wrote me a letter from a low place. He said I humiliated him. I didn't respond. The beginning of my life was spent answering men who said I made them feel small. Kelsey clung to Adam like she'd been personally assaulted. Douglas cleaned his glasses a lot and said the phrase optics 3 times a day for a week like it was a superstition. He asked me for a loan for the refinance. Imagine that. And I laughed. He isn't used to people laughing at him. We had a different kind of conversation after that. It was quiet and it had teeth. I told him he'd never put a hand on my shoulder again. I told him words like kiddo were retired from his vocabulary in my presence. He still waves to me at the mailbox, but with respect. He doesn't call me Ellie anymore unless he's sure I'd laugh. I put money in the bank to buy breathing room. I let myself buy a good mattress. I paid off the house. I funded a program in the art department at Willowbend High to buy supplies for kids whose parents can't afford the list. It's called the Green String Fund. We tied a piece of that string around the scissors at the ribbon cutting, and the kids asked what it meant, and I said it meant not for sale. They laughed. They get it more than we think. Adam and I did the work that comes after the public part, where everyone claps. He spent weeks trying to explain to me what was in his chest the morning he sold that bundle. I listened. He apologized in the small ways that matter. He paid me back the $500 in 1s and 5s he earned working late at the hardware store. He set the money down and looked at me like a grown man. I was scared, and I wanted to be seen, he said. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to solve a problem less complicated than my feelings. He laughed, embarrassed. It felt good for 2 minutes. And then, I said, and then I realized the difference between being useful and being right. He rubbed the back of his neck. I almost ruined something big because I didn't know how to be small. Welcome to the club, I said. He laughed again. We hugged in that kitchen. We hugged like we'd found each other after yelling for an hour in a noisy store. Kelsey left 2 months after the auction. She wrote me a note on expensive paper, apologizing for calling me a pioneer doll. She said she wanted a life where she didn't have to think about green strings. I get it. Some people want the world to be glove compartments. Everything small, everything labeled, no surprises. I want my life to be a paper bag full of oranges once in a while. A month later, Adam joined a group he'd laughed at in college, Men Who Cook, for a fundraiser at the community centre. He wears an apron and calls me for recipes. He's started dating a nurse who isn't impressed by auction catalogues. She brings me muffins and talks to me like I'm a person, not a museum exhibit. As for the painting, it's hanging where it should be hanging, which is in a public museum with children pressing their noses to glass. It's on loan for 10 years with an agreement that any classroom in our county can see it for free. Bus and field trip costs covered by the trust. The museum calls me once a week, makes sure I'm still breathing, and sends me photos of small hands sketching the angle of the nose. The young reader's eyes are bright. You can see the moment he understands the words will make him more dangerous in a good way. Some days I sit on a bench across from him and watch people watch, and that's almost as good as owning a thing. Actually, it's better. Owning isn't what I thought it would be. There's always a request, always a next paper to sign. But the look people get when they realize the old stories aren't all gone, that's pure oxygen. There was one more twist, and I will tell you because you've been patient with me and because I promised a story. 2 months after the auction, a woman in navy sandals walked into my yard while I was deadheading petunias. She had a small bag and a look like someone who had done the math. It took me a minute to place her without her Mr. Linen. "You were with Victor," I said. She smiled with half her mouth. "I was," she said. "Not anymore." She opened her bag, took out a small frame. It was ugly, gold, flaking, a ribbon of carved laurel that had seen better parlours. "He took this off a painting he bought from a widow in Kingston," she said. "He planned to reframe, upcharge, resell. She cried when he left with the frame because she thought it was half the memory. She set it on my patio table like it might bite. I didn't know how to return it without his maps, but I can give it to you. I heard you know how to find owners." "You heard right," I said. "What's your name?" "June," she said, like she hadn't said it in a while. She looked at my petunias. "You humiliated him, you know." "He humiliated himself," I said gently. She nodded. "He said it was a game, and I believed him until I saw your face at that sale. It isn't a game, is it?" "No," I said. "It's a neighbourhood." We found the widow. We drove out there ourselves, me and June, 2 women with a frame in a towel in the back seat of my car. The widow cried. We cried. She gave us tea with too much sugar. June wrote me a thank you note later, in good pen, and enclosed 5 20s and a sentence. "For the playground." I pinned the note on my fridge. There's a green string taped to it. I see Paige twice a week. She still runs the HOA with an iron fist and a velvet glove. She's nicer to me now. Respect doesn't always look like an apology. Sometimes it looks like her never once again calling out my garden at a meeting. Sometimes it looks like her telling me in private that she calls her mother more because of me. That's a win I didn't expect. The playground has better mulch. The kids don't care. They care about the slide. But I care. We still do the garage sale. Of course we do. It's America. We trade pieces of ourselves and call it clearing space. But now we have a rule printed on the flyer, right under "No early birds" and "Cash is king." It says, "Green string means not for sale." I didn't ask for that. Paige put it in. I thanked her. That's the trick with neighbours. Take the gift without interrogating the motive. It'll drive you nuts if you need a pure heart with every kind deed. They asked me once at the museum dedication to say something like a moral. I know what they wanted, and I know what I can give. I said this: we are all caretakers of something. Maybe it's a painting. Maybe it's a boy you raised who doesn't know yet that he's a man. Maybe it's a letter with a coffee ring that says, "Thank you," from a person whose story got interrupted by a war. Take care of it with your whole hands. Tie a string around it if you need to. And when the time comes, Don't be afraid to stand up in the middle of a sunny Saturday and say 3 words out loud. They might not be the ones on my microphone that day. They might be, "I was wrong," or "Help me, please," or "Not this time." Whatever they are, say them. The world will act like you've asked for a lot. You haven't. You've asked to be human in public. If you're watching this from a kitchen table or a bus seat or the break room, and you've got your own version of a green string in a drawer somewhere, this is me telling you, you're not crazy for keeping it, and you're not mean for letting it go when it's time. And if you think you can't win against linen shirts and nice shoes, you can. You will. If this story landed for you, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read them. I really do. And if you've got your own garage sale tale, times you were underestimated and got your justice, share it. Somebody out there needs your green string story today.